All right, now we're getting ready to take the old carburetor off. Before we do that, though, there's a few things you should probably know. First thing is, do it when the engine's cold. If you do it when the engine's hot, you're just going to burn your fingers and risk the chance of like dropping a part or dropping a tool, and that's no fun. Second thing is, you're going to need a couple little items before you start. And first thing would be, get some tape, some masking tape like this, and a Sharpie pin. This way you can mark vacuum lines and fuel lines to remember which ones went where. Second thing is, when you undo the fuel line, there's a chance that fuel might drain out of the tank. So if you have a neoprene line or a rubber line, you're going to want to get these little items like these. These are called plugsets. And this will just stick right in the fuel line, and that way the fuel can't just drain out. If you don't have any plugsets, you could use a wooden dowel or even a center punch like this just to prevent the fuel from coming out for a little while. Now, some of you are going to have cars that have vacuum advance distributors. And before you start, you're going to want to know if your vacuum advance uses ported vacuum, or what they also call timed vacuum, or manifold vacuum. Most of them use ported vacuum, but you want to be sure. And a quick way to tell is before you start, just briefly start the engine up, just for a few seconds. Come down and find the vacuum hose that goes to your distributor, pull it off, and stick your finger over it. Now, if it's manifold vacuum, it's going to have a pretty good vacuum signal there. Actually, suck your finger on there. You'll actually feel it. If it's ported vacuum or timed vacuum, you'll barely feel a little bit of suction there. But that'll let you know what port on your new carburetor you're going to plug your vacuum advance into. Make sure that when you're checking for the signal for your vacuum advance that the engine's either warmed up or that the choke is open so you don't get a false vacuum reading. Okay, we're going to start by removing the fuel line. You got to be careful though. Sometimes the mechanical fuel pumps will hold pressure in a line even if the motor hasn't been run for a while. So we're going to take a nut driver and pull this off and keep a rag handy. I have a rag right here. Sometimes fuel will go places that you don't want it to go. And just kind of wrap it over. If it's got fuel pressure in the line, it could squirt out. So just be careful with that. Pull this off. And if fuel starts to come out, you stick a little plugset in there. All right, now we need to disconnect the vacuum lines and all the other outer goodies on the carburetor. So I'll take the PCV line off and our vacuum advance line. Next, we'll take the throttle linkage and spring off. Okay, now we just connect the choke linkage just by removing the little clip. Now keep in mind with little clips like this and washers and nuts and bolts, if you're taking a clip off or you have 4 nuts and 4 bolts or 4 washers, and all of a sudden you have 3, find it. Make sure it did not go down the carburetor or anywhere in any of the orifices around the carburetor because it'll go inside the motor and you'll have motor damage. All right, next we remove the mounting bolts. All right, next we'll go ahead and take the carburetor off the intake manifold. Just pull straight up on it. And again, be careful that nothing drops down the intake manifold or you can have serious engine damage. Pull the gasket off, and there's the intake manifold. Okay, now we're going to remove the choke assembly. Now this is what they call a divorce choke. The carburetor we're going to put on has an electric choke, so it's all self-contained. Divorce choke just means it uses manifold temperature to activate the choke assembly. Of course, we're not going to need this anymore. Now, some cars use exhaust gas to activate the choke, and for those we have block-off plates specifically designed for different manifolds. Okay, next we remove the studs. Vice grips come in handy for that. All right, now that those are out, we're going to look at the gasket surface here. Now the key to not having vacuum leaks, one of them is a very clean gasket surface. If we look down here real close, you can see old gasket material put on here is still stuck. We need to get all that off, and as well as the carbon that's along here, or we're surely going to have a vacuum leak and the car's not going to run right. Now what we're going to do to remove the gasket material is use a gasket scraper and some rags. We don't want any of this material going down inside the engine. So we just take some rags and stuff them down in here. That prevents any gasket material or carbon or anything like that to get down and cause any damage inside the engine. Next we use a little bit of carburetor cleaner just to clean the surface, any excess dirt or grease